Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into an absolutely massive high-stakes clash of digital paradigms. We are going to contrast the deep, almost mind-reading surveillance capabilities of modern cloud AI with a fierce, growing cultural movement that is straight up demanding local hardware independence. It's a battle for the very foundation of how we compute, and it is happening right now. Just think about this for a second. Can we actually read a machine's mind before it even speaks? I mean, consider the sheer computational power and the deep access required to peek into the internal, private thoughts of an AI model before it even generates a single word. It sounds completely like science fiction, right? But as we're about to see, it's entirely real. To understand this, let's look at Anthropic's recent breakthrough, an interpretability tool known as the Jacobian Lens, which peers into something called J-space. Now, the sources present this as the ultimate example of centralized, probabilistic cloud surveillance. It literally maps internal model activations, meaning researchers can read and even intervene on hidden concepts developing inside the AI well before any text is actually output. All right, so here's our roadmap for today's explainer. 1. The mind-reading machine. 2. The royalist cloud enclosure. 3. The McLean Jacobite resistance. 4. Gamblers versus ALU surveyors. And finally, 5. The sovereign pilot protocol. Let's get into it. Okay, part 1. The mind-reading machine and peering right into J-space. So what's really wild about this J-lens is how it surfaces this tiny internal workspace where the model's actual reasoning takes shape. During testing, it silently caught concepts like blackmail or manipulation brewing in the background, acting entirely before token generation. Now, this acts as an incredibly powerful yet highly centralized auditing tool for frontier models, giving absolutely unprecedented oversight to the entities that control the cloud. Moving right along to part 2, the royalist cloud enclosure and the impending 2026 crisis. Now, researchers are framing this massive observational power as part of an infrastructural power grab, something they're calling agentic kingship. Think of it as the 21st century great enclosure of cloud AI. Essentially, this system tries to meter out intelligence and enclose the computational commons. It does this through an interface inversion. What that means is, instead of you directly commanding a computer locally, the centralized machine manages you. The argument here is that it turns human users into passive digital tenants, trapped in an automated, probabilistic miasma where you're essentially just renting your logic from a central authority. Which brings us to part 3, the McLean Jacobite resistance and the push for a public compute. The sources trace this fascinating sociological cycle of centralized power versus local autonomy. You've got the establishment of sovereign boundaries back in the 1648 Treaty of Westphalia, the 1689 Orange Pledge breaking absolute monarchies, all the way to Paul Revere's literal physical midnight ride in 1775 to liberate the commons. The argument being made is that the 2026 attempt to restore a sort of pre-constitutional authority in the cloud perfectly mirrors these historical struggles. But this time around, it's a fierce cultural and technological battle for decentralized digital sovereignty. So you've got these two totally opposed ideas. On one side, the royalist cloud, driven by agentic kingship, which is marked by centralized surveillance, probabilistic guessing, and metered rent. On the exact opposite side, we have the McLean Jacobite ethos, representing Republican compute. This side demands that the user becomes a sovereign pilot. It relies on absolute hardware ownership and exact, locally verifiable physical execution. It's grounded in this really cool philosophical concept called axiality, basically the absolute, undeniable physical reality of a specific action in the real world, completely throwing out the cloud's guesswork. All right, part 4, gamblers versus ALU surveyors, getting down to the literal substrate. This perfectly illustrates what the sources call the FPU gambler problem. Deep down inside AI hardware, floating point units use complex approximations to get over trig walls. Sure, it's fast, but it is super lossy. It's kind of like throwing darts at a dartboard to guess the nearest mathematical truth. And that constant guessing creates a wood chipper effect that permanently destroys the exact original data provenance. To escape that whole guessing game, the resistance points to the ALU surveyor. The arithmetic logic unit, it doesn't guess. It deals strictly in hard, exact, deterministic hardware truths. 1 + 1 is exactly 2, every single time. By utilizing exact geometric alignment and integer rigor, the ALU surveyor restores bit-perfect orientation, allowing you to mathematically trace data backward forensically. It's all about rebuilding undeniable digital trust, completely free from the cloud's approximations. And the physical impact of making this shift is absolutely staggering. By bypassing those complex FPU approximations and relying purely on discrete native bit shift operations, systems can achieve a hard energy floor of exactly 0.05 picojoules per operation. That incredible metabolic efficiency unlocks massive hyperdeflation of compute costs globally. It means local, individual sovereign pilots can run rigorous models without needing to rely on some massive corporate server farm.
Finally, Part 5, the Sovereign Pilot Protocol and Reclaiming Execution.
The sources outline a symmetric resolution here called artificial life, or AL. Unlike AI, which they argue pushes cloud enclosure, AL is pitched as the local hardware chassis of agentic sovereignty. It absolutely demands that your human intent is permanently anchored to a physical substrate that you control. And incredibly, it relies on strict mathematical invariance pulled right out of the online encyclopedia of integer sequences, specifically A2971189 and A328604, to restore a perfectly pure, inalienable record that no centralized king could ever alter. So how do you actually do this? The protocol laid out to bypass the cloud APIs has 3 core steps. Step 1, secure your local hardware. You have to literally own the physical substrate. Step 2, publish your unalterable intent via a command line interface using pure exact text to speak directly to the machine. And step 3, execute LIFO, last in, first out, ledgers directly on that substrate. By checking only the very top of the stack, index 0, you achieve flawless single-entry bookkeeping and absolute digital truth.
Which brings us to this crucial quote: "The magic is never in the machine. The magic is entirely in the human intent." To protect that intent, tools like the Medikit CLI act as a sort of modern-day agentic typewriter. It requires actual manual effort, the historical legal doctrine of the sweat of the brow. You have to actively steer, prune, and enforce your commands locally. You are deliberately rejecting the random algorithmic distortion of the cloud, because ultimately you are the orchestrator.
I really want to leave you with this final, deeply provocative thought as we wrap up today's explainer. As this great enclosure attempts to wall off our digital reality and deep centralized surveillance starts mapping the very concepts inside the machine, what's your move? Will you passively accept being a digital tenant in the probabilistic cloud, basically renting your logic from an invisible king? Or will you take the reins, saddle up your own exact deterministic hardware, and ride as a sovereign pilot? The choice of how we compute the future is entirely up to you. Thanks so much for joining me today, and keep questioning the systems around you.